Hey, is this thing on? The Extra Innings Baseball Show is back. Jordan, it's been 2 weeks since we talked to the good people of the baseball community. Welcome back, everybody.
Doesn't
Jordan,
even
how you
feel
doing?
that long.
I know. I was
It flew
doing
by.
the date range on like the notes because our notes aren't like that extensive today, just because there's so much. We're just going to talk about the league in general. But I was doing like the date ranges, and I was like, May 20th, is that right? From like, it's like been like almost a month. Like, how is this possible?
It was just 2 weeks, I think.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks, but for some reason the dates were. I mean, it was only 2 weeks, but the dates.
We recorded
seemed,
on like a Tuesday last week, or the last time, and then we're recording on a Friday this week.
Yeah, so I think it was like May 3rd or something like that.
Yeah,
was the last time that we've talked baseball. So now we're back. We're not talking baseball, but we're the Extra Innings Baseball Show.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan, how you doing?
Doing okay. Just really excited to be able to talk some baseball. I can't get over it. It's kind of like, if I had to liken it to something, I can't get over it the way that the Yankees can't get over Orioles' left field wall. So that's pretty much today, figuratively and literally. And what I mean by that is because only one Yankee has hit it over that wall, but also they can't stop talking about it. It's kind of living in their head rent-free. I wish I could live somewhere rent-free, but unfortunately that's not possible in this day and age. So mainly, even though the Orioles are 15-24, still enjoying the season, being able to watch all of these great teams play. Yesterday just popping on random games as I'm sitting there doing nothing. So that kind of stuff is what baseball is there for. So I'm really enjoying the season so far, the storylines in the season. So, can't get over it.
Our teams are about the same. Mine's 15-22, about to be 15-23. Just kind of, yours is on a much better trajectory though. Like, all of our guys are just getting hurt now, so that's.
Well, it depends if they're going to call up Adley Rutschman sometime this century or next century. Just really trying to figure out that, but I might save that for a word from the warehouse.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, it seems like it's been like the last week or so that you've been like, all right, I'm ready to go to the game.
Any day.
Yep. And every time, what's funny, Jordan? Your Orioles have made some like transactions and stuff, and it always they always tweet it, and I'm like, oh, there it is. And then I'm like reading it, and I'm going, oh, this is like
it's another person making a debut,
right? It's like this is some random guy, I don't know. But yeah, the day will come, Jordan. As Harry Carey would say, the day will come. One day, the Orioles will win the World Series. He didn't say the Orioles; he said the Cubs. But I'm pretty sure.
Well,
the Orioles...
he may have meant in the past. The Orioles have won it 3 times. That might be it.
That's how many times we've won it. Give us 100 and some odd years, and we'll win it 3 times.
We've only been around since '54. The O's
doing better than us. So.
Yeah.
The track record's better. All right, let's get into some baseball. Let's talk some baseball. Let's go through the divisions first. American League East, the New York Yankees sit atop that division. Seems like that's going to be a common thread throughout the season. 28-10. You've got the Rays in second at 23-15. The Blue Jays at 20-18. The Red Sox at 16-22. The Orioles at 15-24 might be able to pass the Red Sox here in a little bit, maybe.
We were up there for a little bit. We were in place for a little bit, and then it fell apart.
Yeah, wheels come off that left field wall. It's gotten into their minds. The AL Central, the Minnesota Twins lead that division 22-16. The White Sox at 19-19. The Cleveland Guardians at 16-19. The Kansas City Royals at 14-23. And the Detroit Tigers having a horrible season at 13-25. Not a good start for the Tigers at all. Houston Astros lead the AL West 25-14. The Angels at 24-16. Texas Rangers at 17-20. The Seattle Mariners at 17-22. The Oakland A's at 16-24. Flipping over the National League East, the New York Mets at 26-14. We'll talk a lot about them because there's a lot of news on the Mets. The Philadelphia Phillies at 18-20. The Marlins at 17-20. The Braves at 17-21. The Washington Nationals at 13-26. In the NL Central, it's the Brewers on top at 24-14. The Cardinals at 20-18. Pirates at 16-21. My Chicago Cubs at 15-22. And the Cincinnati Reds at 11-26. Dodgers lead the NL West at 25-12. The Padres 24-14. The San Francisco Giants at 22-15, and the Colorado Rockies 18-19. The Arizona Diamondbacks finish out the West at 19-21, but are about to beat the Cubs. So pretty interesting division lineups, I guess. Jordan, a couple of these divisions, I mean, there's not teams but one over 500. There's a lot of teams hovering towards that 500 mark. I feel like you've got like two strong divisions, one in the AL East, and then you've got the NL West completing those really strong divisions. But really, I mean, when you look around the league, Jordan, anything kind of stand out to you so far? I mean, we've talked a lot about the Yankees and Mets, and I know we'll get down to that, or if we want to start with that. But anything that sticks out to you?
Looking at this, we were really singing the NL West praises for a bit, but now they have two teams under 500. They were for a while. Everything over 500 or even with 500. So that's kind of taken a turn in the last little bit here. But I think one thing we got to talk about is how bad the Reds were originally, but now they've kind of gone on a 7-3 last 10 here, which puts them only 2 games back of the Nationals for like the worst team in the National League. So that's pretty surprising, I would say. But I think maybe the AL East is something that's interesting. We didn't think Boston would be this bad, but New York is really kind of getting here 5 games up on Tampa and Toronto, who were heavy favorites going into this division. So not really much on the Yankee end do I want to talk about it, but just the fact that Tampa and Toronto have kind of been struggling. Tampa's 5-5 in their last 10, and Toronto's 3-7 in their last 10. And the lineups are just not doing for Toronto what we had thought that, they were going to do. Or when Bob Nightingale accidentally said they had 17 home runs in the first few games instead of 7. I don't even know if they have 17 total. I guess I could check that real quick, but I don't know. They just haven't really done what we kind of thought they would do. And yes, they have way past 17 by now. I was just making a joke. I just looked at the numbers and it's way up there. But Vladdy and Springer leading with 7 home runs. Matt Chapman back at 6 home runs. I mean, he's kind of been having a resurgent power year after his hip issue, but he's only batting 185. So not great for him. I think the biggest takeaway of the season is the signings not really having an impact for most teams.
Mm-hmm.
Batting signings, pitching signings been a little better.
I was going to say, I mean, a lot of the guys that are having the impact are the ones that they've re-signed or guys that hadn't quite hit well in the past. I mean, I know Rizzo's hit pretty well for the Yankees in that aspect of the game. And I think, looking at Francisco Lindor and guys like that, I mean, guys that I think many teams thought in the past were going to help them, kind of lead the charge. But I think you're right. Like, I think it's interesting. You look at the Blue Jays, and it's a team that I think we thought, that they were maybe a surprise for best team in the American League this year. I think you and I had them pretty far in the playoff run. I think if you look at that team just up and down, you look at, Vlad Guerrero, who's hitting 284. He's got the OPS of 838, which is really high. George Springer, like you said, an 833 OPS. But just some solid guys at the top of that lineup. I mean, Santiago Espinal's played pretty well as he's gotten some games and run. Alejandro Kirk has played pretty well behind the plate. But I mean, seriously, if you look at this team, I'd say that they're one of the more deep rosters in the AL East, and maybe one of the more deep rosters in this whole league. It's just a matter of, can they get it going and kind of catch up to the Yankees, just because the Yankees have just been so good. And you've gotten to see the Yankees a lot. You're getting to see the Yankees pretty close up. I mean, is it continuously going? I mean, is it continuous?
But can I mention something real quick?
Yeah.
Blue Jays, you were right. I just looked up what we had. You had them in the ALCS. I had them in the World Series. All right. So they got to turn this around to make us look like we know anything what we're talking about. But you mentioned the Yankees. A fun stat, and I say this because I'm an Orioles fan, but 30% of the Yankees' losses have come from the Baltimore Orioles. They only have 10 losses. 3 of those are Baltimore, which is just mind-boggling. But I really think I really want to know how this is going to work out when they do the new schedules,
Mm-hmm.
because Logan, the Orioles have faced the Yankees a lot so far. They've done, I think, 3 series, 2 in Baltimore, 1 in New York, and right after this Tampa Bay series, the Orioles go right back to the Bronx. Then we will not play them again until late August or September. So it really is like this weird thing. I feel like the Blue Jays have played them a lot already.
Mm-hmm.
It took the Orioles a while to play the Red Sox. The Orioles haven't played Blue Jays yet. Like, I understand if they want to lean heavily into your division, but some of these ways it gets scheduled is just bizarre, where 14 of the 19 times we play the Yankees are, in the first month of the season. And then from there, we go into a long stretch of not having to face them.
Mm-hmm.
So while we look at these standings sometimes, especially the AL East, things can shift, right? Some people might look at that and say, well, the Yankees have faced the Orioles a lot. They swept them in the Bronx. They took 3 out of 4 against them here. They took 1 against the Orioles earlier in this set. Not in this set, but in another, the first Easter area of the season. So that's a good chunk of wins that they're getting right there. So some people are going to have the doubt of how good they are because of balancing schedules. And does that mean the Orioles now get that out of the way and now they can rise above Boston in the standings because they don't have to face the Yankees again for a while and they're the best team in the division? Or, it kind of, I feel like this has happened a lot with a lot of divisions too. Just like when I turn on MLB.TV and I keep seeing the same matchups early in the season, it's kind of strange. I'm not sure why they work it out this way, if it's just the computer or if there's some sort of determination that this is how they actually want to do it. But I wonder how next year, when they go to a more even approach, if we're still going to possibly have the first 10 of the 14 times we Yankees in the first month of the season and then not see them again for a while. I feel like it'd be better to kind of split those up across the months, but I know then you have to also weight it against other teams that you have to play. So I'm not envious of the schedule maker, but I just found it odd how this has happened so out of whack this season.
Yeah, they've got, so on Baseball Reference, it's funny because they got a breakdown of the number of times that you guys have played. So far, it's been 10. You guys have another 3-game set coming up.
Yeah.
So that'll be 13 of the, that's your first, if you do, I don't even know how many games.
First 50-some games, yeah. Right?
So you guys right now currently sit with, where are the Orioles? You guys have 39 games played. And you're going to have 3 more with the Yankees, and that'll be 13 games. But then it does, it kind of balances itself out because then the Yankees start to play some really strange matchups against different clubs. I mean, I know they got the Cubs coming up at the beginning of June. I know they go out they play LA in New York, the Angels. So they're getting some variety. But like you said, it'll be interesting to see. And I always wonder this, Jordan, how does the schedule maker sit there and do this? It's got to be computer generated, just because I think that it'd be okay, well, let's match this up here and this up here. Well, that doesn't fit there and there. So it seems like it's got to be generated by the computer. But
yeah, I assume it's a formula of each team needs 81.
Mm-hmm.
We need 19 against, right? It's 19 or 18 against each division opponent.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to play some other teams, and it just kind of works it out. I think then it just computes all this stuff. But then they also have to make sure that they have certain parameters, right? Like Boston is always hosting during the Boston Marathon, right?
Mm-hmm.
They had already announced a year before the schedule release that Boston and the Orioles were going to play at the Little League Classic.
Mm-hmm.
So they knew that they needed to have, I think the series is going to take place in Baltimore for the first 2 games and then go to Williamsport. So the computer has to probably be sorting it out. And I think the people just probably dictate things. But I want to know if one of the things they dictate is like, let's load up the Yankees with the Orioles really early in the season, and then they'll never see them again until August. Like that's what I kind of wonder, because I feel like we've seen a lot of here's something. I was just watching Dodgers Phillies in LA.
Mm-hmm.
They start a series in Philly tonight. LA Dodgers versus the Phillies. I'm going to the game tomorrow and Saturday. So again, just kind of weird that they would do that, because they're not even in the same division, but they're playing each other twice with a span of one series in between them. It's just kind of odd scheduling.
Yeah, and then I mean you get the bad, like, so for instance, the Yankees are one of the hottest teams, if not the hottest team in baseball right now. So then the
Record-wise,
Orioles, yeah. So then the Orioles have to play them, and it might be because of the Orioles, the Yankees are so hot that their record's kind of inflated. But it could also
Again,
be
though, we've won 3 of those,
right.
10, right?
Yeah,
3 of the 10.
yeah, 3 of the 10. But still, it's not fair that the Orioles have to go through a stretch, and then there might be a July stretch, and I mean that's baseball, but like you have a July stretch where the Yankees play more like games against the Rays or something, and then it's like, well, that sucks. Like they're really not good, and the Orioles are caught with a bad break because they've got to play them 13 times to start the season. So it is kind of wonky. Like, at least spread it out. Like, there's so many times where, like, you're right. That, or the one I really don't like is I don't like when they do and they do this in the inner city stuff. Like, so they'll do Cubs White Sox at Wrigley, and then 2 games Cubs White Sox at wherever they call it now. I don't even know what the guaranteed rate, I think. But I don't like that. I don't like.
They've kind of stopped doing that. They
fandom.
used to do that for the Nationals and the Orioles. Like, there'd be 2 games in National in DC, then 2 games at Orioles, and they would do that like in a 4-game set, but it was hosted at different places.
Because I know they still do it with the Cubs, because I know there's games where we play the White Sox. I'm like, why do we play the White Sox and then the White Sox again? And then we'll have a series and then we'll play the White Sox again. I'm like, what is happening? Like, how many times are we going to play them? But it is brutal. I just don't get, and I'm excited to kind of see what a balanced schedule looks like, just because I'm excited. I think you and I were excited because we finally get to see NL teams play AL teams that we don't usually get to see. Like, we don't really get to see the Cubs play at Camden Yards. We don't get to see, the Yankees visit Milwaukee a ton. Like, it would just be a lot of fun to kind of see these teams visit places, because it's just so unique. The Cubs visiting Fenway was always fun for me, or when we went to Yankee Stadium, or if we ever went down to Tropicana, like, it was cool just to see a different ballpark. And it's funny, Jordan, I was like playing the show and I'm like, this is one of my favorite parts of the show, is like when I jump to a new series and I get to go play somewhere else, and I'm like, I love this, or I get to go play in Anaheim or wherever it might be.
That was the fun thing of demanding trades for me. It's like, all right, what stadium's going to be my home stadium this year? Been on like 3 or 4 different teams now.
Yeah, which dimensions do I like that I can hit 100 home runs or whatever your player hit that one time?
There and Oakland. You don't want to bat there.
No.
I loved it in Miami. Miami had a nice left field that I was able to really crank them out on.
I like Miami. Yeah.
And then whenever I would visit Camden Yards, because this is before they pushed the wall back, man, I was cranking them out left field there too.
All right. Let's see. What do we want to talk about next? Let's do the Brewers, because as a Cubs fan, I've been watching the division, obviously, and kind of looking at where teams lie. And the Brewers, Jordan, incredibly hot. And they were a team that we said, if their pitching can pitch and the hitting can kind of find a way, that it's, I think their hitting is the one that was like coming. I know their pitching was one of the best in the league last year, and it's become one of the better rotations in the league year in and year out, just because the Brewers seem to put it together some quality arms. But when you really look at the Brewers' run recently, it's been a kind of combination of both. And I'd say their pitching really does pretty well all the time, but their hitting has kind of come around and kind of twofold. It's just gotten right back into kind of what it had been before. And you look at the stats. I mean, you got guys like Christian Yelich finally starting to hit again. Not quite as high of an average, but is starting to make more contacts, drive runs in. Rowdy Tellez has been absolutely on fire. He, not a high average guy, but he does drive in a lot of runs. But again, it all comes down to that pitching. Their pitching staff ends up being one of the best pitching staffs in this league, and they've got guys like Corbin Burns pitching well. Eric Lauer's pitched pretty well this season, and their bullpen's always been solid. Hader hasn't given up and run in 13 and third inning, but the Brewers just, starting to kind of stomp through the NL Central. And Jordan, I think an NL Central that has proven to be pretty weak, because I think the Pirates, the Cubs, and the Reds, just not very good teams. But the Cardinals, got to compete with them.
Yeah, I think what I find the most interesting right now when I look at the Brewers is that they've only played 5 games against teams that are above 500.
Mm-hmm.
And they're 2-3 in those. So what I find interesting about that is obviously you can't choose who you play,
right?
How good they are. So yeah, you take the wins where you can. But it seems like most of their wins, 22 of their wins are against teams under 5, which is kind of just mind-boggling. When you look at the other teams in that division, St. Louis is 8-10 with teams that get above 500. Pittsburgh's 4-11. The Cubs 6-11. Cincinnati 3-16. All of them have played way more games against teams above 500. I assume some of those games are against the Brewers, who were above 500. But they're 4 games up. That's great. But in their last 10, they're 5-5. So I'm still not really sold on them. I think they'll be fine. I do. But, just looking at their last 10, looking at the record against teams above 500, they haven't really been tested yet, it seems. You look at teams like the Dodgers, they're 6-1 above 500. Yankees 9-4. All of these teams that I'm looking at have played way more teams above 500, except for like San Diego, who's 2-4. The Rockies are 3-6. Everybody else has played like tons more games against teams that are above 500. The Mets are 8-3. So just something to keep an eye on. I'm not saying it means anything. They got a nice series against the Nationals coming up here this week. That is obviously a team that is not above 500. So that's going to add to that stat of they're not going to add to the 2-3 this weekend because of that. But hey, they're going to probably be able to get close to a sweep of the Nats, I would assume. It is a home series for the Brewers as well. But they're actually pretty even home and away. 12-5 at home, 12-9 on the road. So I'm not even so much sure that that's going to be a factor for them to beat Washington anyway. But just an interesting stat that they've only played 5 games against teams above 500, and just keeping an eye on that. Maybe St. Louis can make up some ground later on because of that. But, if you're the Brewers, just keep on trucking. Beat the Nats, sweep them, and you're golden.
I think it's an interesting point too to bring up. Like when you said it earlier, 76 games against your division when you're playing 3 teams that are towards the bottom of the NL. Like, that's a huge plus. And the Cardinals kind of hovering around that 500 mark. And the Cardinals, they've done that in the last couple of years, but they've just early in the season, they just kind of hover. They never come out of the gate strong, but they always go on these like runs. I know last year, I think they went on some kind of run where it was like 18 or 19 straight or something crazy. And it was like they're just running through the league, and they get on these nice little spurts where they gain, ground on the Brewers, and the Brewers kind of fold easily. But if you look at the Brewers, what I was shocked about, Jordan? Like they're pretty high up there in the OPS across the league. They're like in the top 10. But then if you go over there to their actual like stats and stuff, like their averages, their highest average in their starting lineup right now. And they've got kind of a platoon situation there with Victor Caratini and Navarre and how do you say that? Narvaez, I think that's how you say it. But you've got him with 253, but the next one's 250, and Hunter Renfroe. And then after that, it goes to 246. I mean, the guys aren't like crushing the ball, and their slugging is not like that high compared to some of these other teams. But I mean, their on base percentage is pretty decent. But it's not like the guys are just like this offense isn't like a potent offense. And one of their best players is on the IL. Like you've got Andrew McCutchen as one of their best offensive players. But this team, I mean, if you look at, there's such a lackluster offense. I think that's where they're really going to struggle later on in the season if they don't add a bat or two. Just because I just don't know with them.
And before we move on from the Brewers, I looked up their schedule. All right, so they started off against the Cubs, above 500. Then they went to Baltimore. Then they went to then they faced St. Louis. 2 wins against St. Louis in a 4-game set. That's 2 of the wins that are above teams that are 500 or above. They sweep the Pirates, who are not above 500. They take 2 out of 3 against the Phillies, who are not above 500. They do they play 1 game against the Giants on the Monday 25th?
That sounds right, because I think they had some kind of
makeup or something for one of the games that were canceled earlier in the season, I guess. Okay, so they lost that game. That is a team that's above 500. That's their 3rd loss. Those are the 5 games, Logan, they've played above 500. Because then you have the Pirates again, the Cubs again, the Reds, the Braves, the Reds, the Marlins, back to the Braves. And now they face the Nationals. After the a run of teams like the Padres, the Cardinals, and then back to the Cubs before facing the Padres again. So they're going to start getting a little bit more tough teams, but they don't face like the Mets until mid-June. Then they face more Cincy, more Philly, more St. Louis, Toronto in June, Tampa Bay in June. But then they're back to the Pirates and the Cubs and the Pirates. I mean, they have a pretty... It's not really until mid-June and July that they're really going to start hitting any more teams that are above 500, which is just... That is crazy. I mean, how do they end out their season? They feel like they've played almost all their division opponents. Then July, they have to face Cincy again and Pittsburgh again and Cubs again and then Cubs again and then Pittsburgh again and then the Reds again. This is crazy. They face the Yankees in late September and the Mets in late September for a 6-game homestand against the New York teams. And then they're back to Cincy, and then St. Louis, Miami, and Diamondbacks. I mean, okay, they're probably not going to lose the Central. Looking at this, looking at their schedule, that's a pretty cupcake schedule for the Brewers that they should be as good as they are right now. But just crazy that they're not going to face like... Now, some of these teams might increase to above 500 by the time they play them, but just looking at some of the teams they have to play right now, they got it pretty good.
Yeah, no, you're
Sorry,
not wrong.
Brewers fans, if you feel like we're going in on you right now, but I'm just looking at. I mean, I don't know if I've seen an easier schedule right now. Like, this is pretty darn good. Like I said, eventually they'll have to get back to facing the Giants, the Padres.
Dodgers.
We'll see how good Toronto and Tampa is against them, but like the Mets is mid-June. The Padres is early June, so they'll have a little bit of run in there, and Padres are next week as well. But yeah, just crazy.
They got a tough August, it looks like. Once they get out of there's a time where they play Cincinnati, but they play Tampa at home, and playing in Milwaukee's a beast of its own, just because it's such a difficult place to play. They got such good fans. It's hard to play there indoors, especially with a team that doesn't play there often. But then they go to the Cardinals. They've got the Dodgers for 4. They go to Chicago, which they don't typically play well in Chicago. And then they play the Dodgers. So they kind of have like a rough end of it. But then you're right, though. Like after that, it's like, okay, well, then they've got the New York teams. But, I mean, they've got teams below them. They got the Diamondbacks. They got one of the best pitching staffs. So, you know, it's not like these games are going to be that fun. I mean, it really is brutal it's fun for, I guess, Milwaukee fans, just because it's going to be, I think, a pretty relatively easy schedule to kind of go through. But again, it really does help. I mean, this division is really bad, and I can't state that enough. The Cubs have been awful. Just don't have any pitching. They're hitting.
I want to ask you about that. What? Yeah, is it just pitching, or
It's a
what's going on with the
combination.
Cubs? I mean, I know that they didn't have like a great lineup when we looked at it, right?
Yeah.
But they were starting to get going, and then it seems like they've just been like, what is their last 10 is 6-4.
Hmm.
So that's not bad. But I know right before that last 10, there was a pretty rough stretch.
Yeah, it's been a tough stretch. Just I think it's been a combination of things. They've had some weird injuries. The guys that they've had Stroman go out with COVID. It's never really officially announced. But they've got guys like that. Schwell's been awful. Patrick Wisdom's been better than he had been, but he's been kind of a shaky person this year. Ian Happ. I mean, the strikeouts are a concern with the Cubs. They always have been, and they were one of the lower teams and strikeouts, and then all of a sudden it was just like they're all the way up towards the top now in strikeouts. They just don't get on base a ton, and that's been a big issue with the Cubs. And I've talked about this a lot with my dad, and you can kind of see it through the Cubs community. It's just the fact that this is a team that we thought was going to make more contact, but they've ended up being one of the worst contact teams right now. And it's just been a combination of that. It's also a combination of not having an owner that, and we can complain all we want, but it really is an owner that just doesn't seem to want to throw money at things. And we had a better offseason than I thought we would. Be interesting to kind of see how Jed Hoyer plays with that, but we've had some really bad injuries in our minor league system too. Braylon Marquez, who's one of our best young pitchers, he's been out hurt. Ed Howard, one of our freak shortstops, going to be out for the season. Blew out, I think it was a quad. I want to say it was bad, and so that's going to be a big. Or no, it was a hip. He blew out a hip, and that's not good. Things just seem to be falling apart at the seams. Suzuki's not been as crazy good as he had been, but again, I think with the Cubs, it's a combination. We don't have any starting pitching, so once that goes south, it's like, oh god, this is going to be a long season, and it's not been great. So
just lost today, like 10-5.
Yeah, it's a lot of things. It's not good. Kyle Hendricks is not anywhere near what he had been in the past. He has games where he looks like old Kyle, but it's mostly just bad games. And I think at this point, they're just going to look at somebody and go, does anybody want, a starter that could be maybe, a 4 or 5 guy.
I mean, even looking at Suzuki's stats, right? I'm just looking at that real quick. 248 average with an 803 OPS. That's still pretty darn good. Second highest OPS on the team. Contreras with the highest. So that's pretty interesting. But yeah, I heard so Swindle got sent down at a time, right? Why?
He got sent down. So this
he had 14 RBI right now. So I'm trying to figure out why he got sent down and get called back up like a week later.
So the fun thing with Frank was that he got called down, and they said that it was more like he just wasn't hitting anything. Like it felt like he was just climbing a hill, that he just couldn't make contact. He wasn't hitting the ball very hard. And then we've got guys that do hit the ball in that position. When you're talking about first base, you're talking about a guy Alfonso Rivas that's played pretty well when he's played, and when he gets more consistent at bats, he's got some pop. With Frank, though, it was more of like he just wasn't getting back to the point where they wanted him where he was last year. And he's actually started to hit a little bit better since they sent him down, but he had issues with his car. And then I think it was like a COVID situation or an IL situation. We had to send, I think it was Nico Horner or maybe it was Michael Hermosillo. But I mean, we got guys all over the DL right now, or IL. But he was on his way back down to Iowa and his car broke down. They just brought him back. They're like, yeah, come back. We kind of need you. And now he's playing again. And he's played pretty well since he's gotten that kind of message that he was going to be sent down. And Ross was like, yeah, sending him down and actually having him try to figure out what's going on down there might be a better thing. I'm just afraid that if you send him down, then that's the end of Frank Schwindel. I don't know. It's he's not young by any stretch of the mean.
Yeah, 30 years old.
Yeah, he's 30. So it's late.
That's bloomer. About the age Adley is going to appear at if they don't call him up soon.
So all sorts of problems with the Cubs. The IL situation, they've got a bunch of injured guys.
Yeah,
Jason Hayward's just not any good. And Ian Happ's and I don't know, it's just not a good lineup, and like they played pretty well to start, but now it's just gone really south. So it's tough. But
Do you think
all
they
right.
finish above the Reds still, or
Yeah, I still think
okay?
they'll finish above the Reds, but I maybe not by much now. I mean, I'm starting to think
Yeah, they're
worse
only
than the
like a
Pirates.
4 games different now.
Yeah, the Pirates look better than us, so that's what's scary. They
Yeah,
at least the Pirates have a lot of good young talent that they are looking forward to.
yeah.
Cubs, man, it's just been one after the other, and our guys are so young that it's not like we can call people up. It'll be a couple of years before you see some of those guys. So that's what's going on in Cub land. But let's talk about some more positive things. Well, I guess positive, but not so positive. Let's talk about the Mets, Jordan, because I want to get your thoughts on this. Um, God, talk about a big hole they're feeling. I mean, it's got to be like the world is just against them right now. Max Scherzer, 6 to 8 weeks with an oblique strain. McGill's out hurt, and Jacob DeGrom didn't get great news on his, tread back towards, uh, pitching in big games and pitching with the team. So that's three guys, and McGill's had a really good season in place of those two that have, they've kind of bounced back on fourth off the IL. Um, but Jordan, is this one of those things that could spell some trouble for the Mets, or do you think they'll be all right with what they've got currently?
I think they'll be all right. I have a lot of faith in the Mets, and that's mostly because of Buck Showalter. We talked about it a lot here. Look, a pitcher is every 5 days, right? So I'm not
Mhm.
too concerned about that. I do think it'll be a next man up mentality. But also another part of my faith is in Steve Cohen, who's probably going to go out there and approve making some big trades or whatever he has to approve to get a pitcher who's on the market soon to cover for if DeGrom doesn't come back on time
Mhm.
or if Scherzer has an extended timeout, because trade deadline's already like what, early August, late July.
Yeah.
So that's only 2 months away,
Mhm.
which means, yeah, I could totally see them going and swinging a big trade or something, because this is their year. This year and the next, what, 3 are probably their best window as it currently stands. If you're going to have players like Scherzer and DeGrom on a World Series winning roster, this is your window's like 2 to 3 years. So I think Steve Cohen feels that, and I think he's going to want to make whatever trade he can and approve any sort of expenditure for the GM to go out there and make those trades. And I just think Buck, the way that Buck is with kind of massaging personalities and stuff, I think they'll be okay. They're 7 games up still on the next team in the NL East. None of these teams have turned it on whatsoever. We have somehow the Phillies in in second. They were flirting with fourth for a while. They're 18-20. Miami 17-20, and then Atlanta, the World Series champions, Logan, 17-21 in fourth place in
Mhm.
the East. They're 8 games back of the Mets. So one of those 3 would really have to go on a tear, and I'm not confident Miami would be able to keep it up once the Mets are healthy. In fact, I'm not actually sure any of these teams will be able to keep it up once the Mets are healthy. Maybe the Braves, if they can really finally turn things around. But I'm not so high on the Phillies anymore. I'm going to get a real close up of the Phillies tomorrow, which I'm really excited about too. I just want to see Castellanos deep drive the left field, but I also want to, get
Mm.
kind of like my own, like, I have games on TV, but I'd like to see the game in person and figure out what is their issue. If they don't, if Logan, if they don't finish in a good spot this year, the Phillies, it's time for Joe Girardi to leave.
Mhm.
I think he was kind of shielded by the Yankees for a bit, but he hasn't really done much with this team. Expectations were sky high this year. Their pitching looked better than we had thought. The bullpen had pretty okay numbers. And then the thing that we were all worried about was the defense, but I don't even think that's been as much of a problem as some of the players just not producing. I don't know. I think it would be time for him to go. And because you don't want to waste prime Bryce Harper.
Right.
who's, by the way, playing with a torn like UCL, but he's still
Mhm.
smashing home runs. It's amazing what he can do. So I think the Mets will be okay, just because I think the rest of the division is not great right now. And if they haven't turned it on yet, I'm kind of wondering when they'll turn it on at all. Now, the Braves turned it on late last year as well, but a lot of that had to do with trade moves that they were making. And I'm leaning more towards the Mets are going to be the ones later in the year.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting division, just because you got the Mets with mounting injury issues, and pitching issues are really tough because it could take over the season, just absolutely destroy you. I would say though, Jordan, I'd say that that's better than having, like you said, your everyday DH go down with torn labrum or
Right.
whatever it might be that Bryce Harper might eventually have to miss the whole season for, because it does seem like he's going to start to kind of accumulate more time off. I know he's not playing against the Dodgers because that was announced, but I mean, I feel like the Mets, if anybody right now, I feel like you can make a trade for a starting pitcher or two and kind of get back on the rails a little bit. And once these guys start to kind of trickle back in, because I don't think DeGrom one that I think you'd be a little bit more concerned about. But I think with Scherzer's, like an oblique strain is typically healed pretty well. And I think with some time off, like that just seems to be a rest thing more so than anything else. Because once you get an oblique strain, while it is lengthy, I think rest. It's not something that it's an ongoing problem, but like with DeGrom, I think that's more concerning just because he keeps having those setbacks, and those setbacks are like pitchers' bodies saying, "Yeah, this isn't right. Something's not right."
Yeah, he immediately motioned.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say something real quick
Yeah,
about
go
Bryce
ahead. Yeah.
Harper. He is confirmed to be out today's game.
Mhm.
Girardi says they're going to shoot for tomorrow. They're taking it was an injection he got in his elbow on Sunday. They thought
Gotcha.
it would only keep him out till Wednesday, but he missed Thursday and Friday as well. So they're hoping that'll come in. He took some swings today, so they feel like he is pretty close. So they don't feel like put him on the IL. But they're 1-3 in games that he have missed. And this is where we're talking about how this can affect you more when it's your everyday DH. And now that the NL has a DH, it's pretty good. But here's how hot he was, right? He was 18 for 36. That's batting 500 in 9-game stretch with 7 doubles, 5 home runs, 12 RBIs, and 11 runs scored. The Phillies have only scored 7 runs in the 4 games without Harper right now. And you have Castellanos, who is 5 for his last 4. Schwarber is 5 for his last 37. And Real Muto, one of the best hitting catchers right now, is 1 for his last 20. His average is down to 230. So he was actually up there for a bit before that stretch. And I read all of that stuff off NBCsports.com/Philadelphia for an article today. I don't want you to think I just had those stats lined up. But I don't know, man. This is I know part of it is injuries, and they've made these signings that maybe haven't, like we said earlier at the top of the show, haven't been putting their team. But I think part of it has to be, Girardi aren't getting enough from these guys.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and also the Braves face the Marlins today, so this weekend. So they're kind of even with each other right now, 17-20, 17-21. This is a chance for Atlanta to go on like a 3-game run and try to leap back over them.
I was going to give you a couple teams here. And you tell me which one I think is more concerning. And I know one, I think it might be the obvious one, but if you're a team currently, and I'm going to give you a couple here, which one are you most concerned about? Boston Red Sox are 16-22. You've got the Philadelphia Phillies at 18-20. The Braves at 17-21. And I guess if I really wanted to, I could throw Seattle in, but I think last year it was kind of just a really good year. But let's just stick with the 3: Braves, Phillies, Red Sox. Who's in the most trouble? Who do you like the most? Like who could make the move that you think, and who might be just kind of that average team? And they might just be what they're presenting as the current situation.
Who are the teams other than the Red Sox?
Red Sox, Braves, Phillies. Which one are you most concerned about? Which one are you least concerned about? And which one's just kind of that middle?
Probably most concerned about the Phillies. I do think Boston will be able to turn it around a bit, not too much. They look, they're Boston. I'm not too worried about them, but
Yeah.
but what you mean is, obviously I'm more worried of schedule wise and if they'll actually meet expectations. Again, with people not meeting expectations, Trevor Story went a long stretch without even hitting a home run. Now he's been a little hot lately. He hit like 2 or 3 home runs yesterday or whatever.
Yeah, he had like a
But
7 RBI game or something crazy.
yeah, 230 average.
Mm-hmm.
For a
That's been
second
the story.
baseman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bobby Dalbec is only batting 165. Like Kike Hernandez, 177. Jackie Bradley, 193. None of these guys are hitting right now, except for Bogarts, who we talked about, like on the third, right?
Yeah.
Devers and JD. Those are still their 3 big hitters that are batting 330 plus right now. Everybody else is in the 1s and the 2s. Not great. And when I say 2s, I mean low 2s, up to 230. That's the other highest. That's Trevor Story. Everybody else is below 230 or they're at that 330 up. So I'm kind of worried about them. Their pitching hasn't been great when you look at starting pitching. Their ERAs are, in the 4s. Who was it? Eovaldi or Pavetta just got lit up the other day in the first inning or second inning. It was brutal, but none of their pitchers have a win, like a wins right now, except for Michael Wacha, who's on the IL. When we look at Phillies, kind of talked enough about them. Braves. So the reason why I'm more concerned about the Phillies overall is because I really feel like this was, look, they went out there and they made sure they spent money. It's not doing anything. They have the added DH, which you would think, okay, we can fit one of these guys in. But now you have Bryce kind of injured. He hasn't missed too many games, so like 5. If he can come back tomorrow. But I'm not sure they're going to have the tools to make big moves in the summer to get bumped up. I'm more thinking the Braves, with how deep they are and with Acuna back, like that they're going to be able to really probably turn it around. And we've seen them make moves last summer. I think they have more probably prospects that are. It seems like the Phillies don't want to let go of their prospects. We had talked about, I forget who they were in the talks to trade for in spring training, but that fell through due to them not wanting to give up their number 1 or 2 prospect. Matt says, who's our resident Philly fan, that they don't like getting rid of their prospects. So if they aren't willing to move the capital to get a big name either hitter or a better pitcher into their rotation to help out and make this climb up the East, then I'm more worried about them, because then you're looking at Girardi probably getting fired if they underperform. Where does that leave the GM? He's the one that brought them in. What's his status? And then you're looking at just a perpetual rebuild, like I said, during a time where it's just Bryce Harper's prime and Castellanos' prime and all these players that you brought in, that now you're losing that window. So that's why I'm more worried for them. Boston will keep spending money, or they'll promote their prospects, whatever. They'll be fine. Braves, they just won a World Series last year, so I'm not too concerned about them. They'll make moves if they need to. But yeah, most concerned about the Phillies.
Yeah, it's like that perfect collision too of players. Like what I was hesitant about with the Phillies, and I guess correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the biggest thing with the Phillies is that you collect all these guys on pretty big contracts. I mean, you got Gene Sakura on a 5-year. You've got Gregorius, who's currently still on a 2. You've got Castellanos on a 5, and that's brand new. Kyle's is on a 4. That's brand new. JT Realmuto, who I think is arguably one of the best catchers, like that makes sense. Bryce Harper's still on that 13-year, $330 million. So if that goes south, that's not good. But it's just like the Phillies are like just like this collection of players that they hope played well together. And while I will not argue and say that they do tend to have a lot of slugging, they don't really get on base a ton. They don't like a lot of that's made up in the slugging category. And they rely heavily on those bats getting hot. And like you said, Jordan, like some of these guys that they went out and signed, they just aren't performing to really high standards. And when you're not, it's glaringly obvious because of how much money you spent. And then you said it, like if you're not going to get rid of some of these prospects, you're not going to get a top of the line starter. They don't have like that top of the line guy. Like Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola, if I'm running them out there, I'm going, okay, yeah, I'm not very confident in winning a game or two. So I don't know, like the Phillies situation, I kind of want to sit there and go, I want to be the first one out there and say, hey, this might not be a great team. This might just be one of those teams that just collects people and it never really kind of pans out just because they're just throwing money at people. And there's a lot of teams that try this that, let's just throw some money and hope it goes well. Yeah. Third. That sounds about right.
We had them third, and that probably still seems right.
Yeah.
They're second right now. Logan, I don't know if you have their averages up, but do you know with Bryce Harper out who their highest batting average is right now?
I'm going to guess Real Muto.
Alec Boehm, 300.
Really?
Gene Segura, 294. Gregorius, before he was on the IL, is 288. But you have Castellanos batting 271. Kyle Schwarber, 189. I mean, that's crazy. Do you know how many strikeouts Kyle Schwarber has?
100? No. Probably closer to 50.
Almost nailed it. 49.
Okay.
40 season is so young. And
yeah.
He's got 49 strikeouts. Castellanos 8. Hoskins has 44. I mean, Bryce has 33, but that's still much better. I mean, Bryce's OPS was 994. The only person that comes close to that is Gene Segura on the players that are available right now. Yeah, so I'm kind of worried about them. Pitching wise, they're in the 3s ERA. So they're doing fine pitching right now. When it comes to the starters, it's just, some of the bats are not there. What's their record against teams above 8-11?
That sounds right.
I saw a really funny stat earlier. Let me see if I can pull it up. I can't fact check this right now. But this was from a Phillies fan, so I feel like I have to check this real quick. It was a stat of how many games, like their record in the last few games that they've played. Go ahead and talk. I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah. And like going back to what you said about Kyle, I mean, that's what you expect. Like that's what Cub fans knew. Like Cub fans know he's going to hit his home runs, but when he doesn't hit home runs, he strikes out. And that's really it. Like that's what you get from him. Jordan, also another thing to kind of point out as far as defensive efficiency, they're bottom of the league almost. They're bottom third of the league in defensive efficiency, which means that their defense is, while it might not be glaringly obvious that they're making mistakes, it's glaringly obvious that the routes in which they take and different things bottom 5. The teams below them, the White Sox, which makes sense as to why the White Sox aren't as good this year, but just routes they take, runs that they can't, cut down because of defensive issues that they have. So they're just not a good defensive team. And we knew that going in just because there's a highlight reel. If you haven't seen it, go look at the highlight reel from spring training. It kind of gives you, it sums up what exactly the Phillies are defensively. What's the fun fact? You got it?
All right, yeah. The Phillies are 10-10 in their last 20 games, 25-25 in their last 50 games, and 100-100 in their last 200 games.
That's insane. That's insane.
That was from this morning. A Phillies fan account posted that, named John Foley at 2008 Phils, and he's got 15,000 followers, and his bio is assorted Phillies nonsense. So I'm assuming he did the research, but as a Phillies fan, but that is perpetual 500 ball in the last 200 games. So that's not great.
And especially with the amount of money they're spending, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Average is not good. And average in Philadelphia is really not good. They will take that team apart by the seams, those teams. those fans. But I guess the last thing on your notes, Jordan, you were talking about stadium talk, because I guess there's a bunch of stadium talk going on in the AL. Like, you kind of fill us in
Yes.
on what's going on over there, because it sounds like a lot of complaining about different fields. I can introduce you to another field called Wrigley Field. I'm sure that Yankees and Orioles and everybody else that wants to play over there have some complaints about them. So, but go ahead, Jordan. What are the complaints?
So Texas Rangers played a series in New York, and they were upset. Chris Woodward, the manager, made a comment about how they play at a little league ballpark because of how short right field porch is. And the walk-off that the Yankees had hit against them went to right field, but it was several rows deep still. And he mentioned that, and he was upset about that. And it came off just kind of real condescending and just idiotic, because one of his players had hit a home run that barely crossed the fence earlier that game to tie the game up. So if you're saying their run shouldn't count, then yours wouldn't have either. So not really sure what he gets there. But my point is, with stadiums, right? We all know the dimensions when we go into them. So I thought it was stupid that he was complaining about Yankee Stadium. And I get upset whenever Oriole fans are complaining about Yankee Stadium, because it's both teams can take advantage of that right field porch. Now, I find it funny because Yankees got really defensive. They got really like, oh, blah, 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 right? And guess what? Then they go to Baltimore and they throw a fit that they can't hit one over the left field wall, that the Orioles just pushed back and made taller. By the way, Aaron Judge comes out and says that this is some sort of create a ballpark thing, like a video game, right? The new left field and stuff. He's like, they made this beautiful ballpark into a create a ballpark, or whatever he said. And you know why he was complaining? Because one of his balls that would have been a home run last year, and a home run in 29 other parks, was a double. But he also had hit 2 other home runs that game. Why are you complaining? You already hit 2. My point being is, one, and then I saw all these Yankee fans complaining about the field after they were just defending their field for being too short. They're upset this one's too long. And my point is, you know the dimensions going into it. And also, it's not your ballpark. So step off. I don't care if the Yankees or the Yankee fans like the Oriole ballpark. You know why? Because that's my ballpark. I don't care. You shouldn't have a say in it. And then, the Talking Baseball account puts out yesterday that, because Mancini said none of the hitters like it, obviously. And they said, why wouldn't they have consulted their all-star who represented them in the home run derby last year? And I said, and, this wasn't seen at all because nobody cares, but I said to it, why would they consult Trey Mancini when he's not even going to be on the team in the future when this is really relevant?
Right.
As much as that sucks for all the Trey Mancini fans like myself and the Oriole fans, he's gone by the end of the year. So why would we ever consult him on the length of the wall? He's not going to be here for it. I don't care. It's our wall. Let it go. Guess what? It's hurt the Orioles as well. But it's made for more doubles. It made for more triples. It's making for a lot more balls in play, which is kind of the whole point of it, but also not to hurt the pitching staff as much. And it's been working. So rant over. Care about your own stadium. Stop complaining about all the other stadiums, because that's what's beautiful about Logan. All the fields are different dimensions. The outfield is all different. I like that about it.
Yeah, it makes the game unique. Makes our ballpark fun. And those quirky things, like the Cubs have those weird in the corners. It dips out and it goes back. There's so many balls that are caught back there because of that. There's so many balls that go into the basket. That's what makes it fun. There's so many balls that hit up against that right field board in Philadelphia or in Colorado, or the green monster in left field in Boston, or up onto the short porch in the Yankee Stadium. Like, that's what makes it fun. And like you said, I think it definitely adds intrigue to the game, because you just never know. Like, on a given day, I mean, wind's blowing in, coming up Kobe Cove over in San Francisco, where it's just blowing completely straight in, and knocking balls down, or balls launched into the bay, and the canoers and kayakers and everybody else are jumping into it. Just makes the game more fun. And I hate when people complain about ballparks. It's like they think we can change things. Like it's like, oh, well, we can give him a home run because that had been a home run in his ballpark, kind of thing. I don't get why players. It was never one thing I complained about. Honestly, the only thing I ever complained about as field considered was when the field was not in good shape because it doesn't play as well. So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I'll complain about that because that's annoying. Not the
Well, I just keep seeing comments like, "Oh, they took the best ballpark in the world and made it the worst," and I'm like, "You're being so hyperbolic. This wall barely has changed anything. For the first like 3 series, there's barely any ball hit over there."
right.
So, and then people would still make comments about it. But they show stats like this year, Camden Yards averages 1 home run a game. Last year, it averaged 3.
Mm-hmm.
Well, is that taking into account that they deadened the ball? I mean, there's many other factors than just the wall, is what I'm saying. It's everything.
All right, looking at the other divisions, the Twins and the Astros doing their thing in the AL Central and the AL West. The Angels, though, Jordan, still up there. Like it's been a couple weeks since we talked. The Angels still playing good baseball, getting good pitching, getting good hitting. I mean, there's a lot to kind of like about the Angels, right? That Joe Madden has had success with teams. Maybe that were the underdogs in certain situations. I know he was really good with the Rays with that case. And the Angels, man, they've got one of the best. They got the top 2 offenses in the league, in behind the Yankees, and just above the Dodgers.
Hitting grand slams like every
right.
day, it felt like last week.
Oh yeah, no. Every time that you were like tweeting something or like liking something, it was a grand slam from the Angels, which is a lot of fun. But I mean, gosh, guys are just absolutely raking. Taylor Ward at 375, Mike Trout at 320. Brandon Marsh at 282. They've got guys that can hit the baseball, and it'll be cool when some of these other guys start to kind of turn around. Shohei's not hitting quite as well, but he's still above 253, which is pretty decent. But I mean, this Angels team is fun to watch, and I know you get to watch more of the games than I do with the Angels just because it's way past my bedtime. But I know you're able to catch some of the games, and so what are your thoughts? I mean, Angels, are they contenders? Are they real? Are these guys the real deal? Because it feels like week in and week out we continue to talk about them, but can we now that we're sitting here getting closer to June consider them the actual contenders in the AL East West?
I would hope so. They're above 600, so I feel pretty good about them. And the reason I say why I'd hope so is because if they don't, then the division is Houston's. I almost said Austin's. That's
could be Austin's, yeah.
It goes to Houston then because guess what, Logan? This is a surprising thing I should have mentioned earlier, I guess. Texas has leapfrogged Seattle.
Yeah.
They're even on they're even on wins, but Seattle has more losses than Texas. And Texas had started off really, really bad, but Seattle is not the team we thought they were, I guess. We thought they'd be able to put together some of their young stars and make more of a run. Jared Kelenic gets sent down to AAA. Things not looking good for him right now. Some people are already calling him a bust. For me, it seems a little too early still. But, if the Angels can't get it together, then run away with it. Houston, who's 7-3 in their last 10, and 9-7 above teams against teams that are above 500. And guess what? They're performing right to their X wins and losses, 25-14. Angels underperforming that. They're supposed to be 25-15 if you look at the X rate for expected wins and losses. So I hope the Angels are okay because one, I want to see Trout in the playoffs. I want to see Ohtani in the playoffs. That is what we need for baseball, the faces of our sport to be able to be actually in meaningful games at this end of the year. And, Taylor Ward, who's been tearing it up too. I'd love to see him in. He's batting 375 with a 1.209 OPS right now. So love to see that. He's got 9 home runs to Trout's 11. Shohei's got 8. just wanting to see our stars in the playoffs. So I do hope that they're for real, because if things take a turn, then the West is going to get pretty boring. When last,
Yeah, I do. I want to see the Angels compete. I want to see Joe do well. I love watching Joe manage sometimes. Other times he's frustrating as hell, but for the most part, he's a
like when he
fun guy.
intentionally walks a guy with
Yeah,
bases loaded
yeah. There's
down.
times though with Joe, you're just like, I love Joe, and then there's times where you're just like, can he be any worse? So he's an interesting guy. He's a very unique person, an interesting way to manage the game. But yeah, I mean, we've pretty much caught up. I mean, there's a lot going on. Jordan, there's more teams that are, I guess, I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm like sitting here looking at all these teams and going, man, there's a lot of average teams right now. Like there's really good divisions in the NL West and the AL East, but then you look at the other divisions, man, and they're just so subpar right now. And I think that maybe the AL East and NL West are taking advantage of those weaker teams because they're beating and pounding all the other ones into the ground. So just two heavy hitting divisions, and two division I think we thought had the chance to be really good, right? I mean, we thought the AL East, pretty good chance the World
Yeah.
Series winner comes out of there. We thought the NL West, because of how good the Dodgers are and how good we thought the Padres could be if they could just hold on, which it looks like they
Even
might,
the
but who
Giants,
knows? Right,
have been good still.
right.
To have a
Um,
third place team, Logan, that's 22-15
mhm,
is pretty good right now.
right.
That's better than the AL East. That's better than any other division.
Yep.
They have, and actually to have 4 teams with 20 wins in that NL West is pretty great.
Yep. But just, I mean, but it does. It seems like the other divisions are so like blah. Like
Yeah,
the Central's boring. Both Centrals.
for
I
both
mean,
Centrals. Yeah,
yeah,
I mean the Twins are kind of hot and cold
yeah,
at times. I mean, the White Sox are starting to come up because Minnesota hasn't really been able to put anything away. They're 5-5 in their last
right.
10. So.
Yeah, but I mean, I think like the Guardians, Kansas City, and Detroit are going to be scuffling towards the bottom. Both
Yes.
Centrals are very similar. They've got
Yep.
two teams that I think are going to fight for the division. They're going to go up
Almost
and down, up and down, up
identical
and down.
records.
Yep. And then the bottom 3 teams are 3 of the worst teams in that league. So it's brutal. I mean, it's brutal out there for the Central. You're not watching any good baseball when you're watching in the Midwest. So just a really tough stretch. It'll be interesting to kind of see how it shakes. I love how baseball shakes out sometimes though, because you have these teams that go on these runs. Sometime in June, you always have a couple teams go hot in the summer as it heats up, and then you'll have those August runs and September runs. But right now, man,
All of the AL East and AL West would still be above Kansas City and Detroit if they were in the Central. Every single team. So yeah, Kansas City and Detroit are actually the 2 worst teams in the American League. That's crazy.
That's so bad. And the NL Central, they literally have 3 of the bottom teams. If you throw out the Nationals, they do have the 3 worst teams in the league: Cubs, Pirates, Reds. Oof, oof. I mean, the whole NL West is almost at 500. They're 2 teams, 1 game under. So, man, just bad baseball in the Central. And I'm not sure it gets fixed anytime soon. So I think that's it, though, Jordan. Unless you got anything else that you wanna talk about or throw out there, I've kind of run out of things here. There's just so much going on right now, and then once June hits, you really have a dead time for baseball.
Call up Adley Rutschman.
There you go.
Make the call. You know what they said today? They said, Brandon Hyde said, we don't really have a timetable. It's whenever he's ready. He was ready last year. Bring him up. He batted above 300 in AAA last year.
Yeah. And we're past the service time thing. So
it's just manipulation now at this point. We understood he had an injury issue. He's been playing since a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
Just should have been up here this weekend tonight for a home series. Just expecting him up until the 31st, maybe against the Mariners here in Baltimore. If they call him up on the road, I'm going to be furious. But just call him up. What are we doing? That's my biggest thing. And I'll save more of that for work. But just wanted to get that out there.
I agree. Call him up. Let's do it. Let's get this thing done. So I think that's it, though, Jordan. I think that's all she wrote. The games are coming to a halt here, and then we start. I think the night games are starting now. So
yeah, Apple TV. I got it on right now.
Yeah, so you'll be able to check out the night games. So you had two of them postponed today, and then the Cubs got throttled by the Diamondbacks. Kyle Hendricks was awful again today, so that's great. But other than that, Jordan, I think it's time that we introduce the group to the night drive. 14301 Productions would like to present.
Oh, no.
Log
Jam Sports. Don't ruin
it. Dude, sorry. I'm so sorry. It's been a long time.
See it?
Log Jam Sports. See, that was just an opportunity, Jordan. If you want to follow us, and sorry for the 2-week absence, but if you want to follow us, Extra Innings Baseball Show on Facebook, Extra Inning Show on Twitter, and at Extra Innings Baseball Show on Instagram. Jordan is oftentimes tweeting from our account there on the Extra Innings Baseball Show. But if you like us, we got a baseball podcast, we got a soccer podcast, Stateside Soccer Show. You can check us out over there. And then Jordan's got about 36 other podcasts, so give him some love and support. I know he was talking some Strange, I guess, would have been the last thing you talked about on Marvel.
Yes. So. Yep, I'm getting ready to soon record this weekend probably my She-Hulk trailer reaction.
Nice.
I just recorded Behind the Dreams, our Disney podcast, where Jack and I went and did a tier list of the attractions. So we ranked every Disney attraction, and that was a long episode.
I'll have to listen to that one.
Yeah, we'll get ready to we're getting ready for to produce that one this weekend. But yeah, check those out, and then geez, I don't know. Yeah, that's probably about it.
All right. Well, then you've heard from us. That was Jordan Weekend. I'm Logan Stump. This was the Extra Innings Baseball Show. Hope you have a good night, and we'll see you again next week.
The Extra Innings Baseball Show is hosted by Logan Stump, edited and produced by Jordan Wiegand, and we hope that everybody enjoys us talking some baseball in this MLB 2022 season that is upcoming. Thank you.